Hello there and welcome. In the previous episode, we changed the way we send the data to the database, so now we also have a player ID that will help us identify the actual user instead of relying on the name, so this will be much better and much more efficient. Now we want to be able to gather all of this data and fetch it and display it in our leaderboard scene. So we're going to open our leaderboards scene. For now it's empty because we still did not touch it. We're going to create a UI canvas, and this is important because we want the event system to be created. Then on the canvas we're going to set the usual settings. So not here, we're going to scale with screen size, and we're going to set these values so it will be consistent with the other ones. And now that we have this, let's also select Pixel Perfect. Now again, I'm not going to build the entire UI from scratch. I'm going to provide you a link for the UI that I already created. So simply import it into your project. So you're going to get a prefab for the leaderboard screen and also a script named rank slot. So simply import it. Now you may get an error when you import it because we named our class trivia user instead of score, but this script still uses the score name. So we need to change this, and it's not really a problem. So simply double click on the rank slot. So inside the rank slot script, simply change the name of the class because this is not the name that we have. We have trivia user, and again, if you gave it a different name, then just set your data class over here. This is the class that we use to store and send all the data to the database. So now that you changed the name of the class, you can simply save this and this error will go away. Next, we want to drag our leaderboards UI onto the canvas. So simply drag it and make it a child of the canvas. And it should immediately look like this. If it looks weird, maybe you need to click over here and stretch it. So you hold Alt and you click over here and stretch it, but it's already stretched, so there should be no problem. If the colors are different or maybe the font, then it means that you need to change the font because we are using this Roboto font and you may not have it. This is not included in the Unity asset that I provided. You also don't get this bubbly UI. This is something that comes with the Sweet asset pack that we downloaded in the first episode. This one, the Sweetland GUI. So I cannot actually provide you these sprites. You need to download this, but this is free on the Unity store. And you simply place it over here inside the source image of each slot. I'm using this button square white, 250 pixels. So the way we're going to do this is by getting all the users from the remote database, and we're going to check who are the users that have the highest score, and we're going to take the 10 top users and we're going to display them here. And of course, we're also going to sort them, so the user that has the highest score will appear first, and then it will go down. Obviously, you can have more ranks, you can create some kind of scroll view and then scroll down, but we are going to show the top 10 users. And usually when we show leaderboards, we also want to show the rank of the user. So maybe we can add another slot at the bottom that will show the rank of the user. But for this, you actually need to calculate all the ranks of all the users and show the rank of the user. It's not very hard, but we're not going to do this. We're simply going to display the top 10 users. Now, if we click on the slot, we can see that it has this rank slot script. So each slot should have this script, and if it says missing, then simply drag the rank slot over here. And this rank slot will basically take care of populating these slots with the information after we get it from the database. But again, we need to create some kind of manager that is going to control the entire leaderboard scene. So we're going to create an empty object and name it Leaderboards Manager. And a script with the same name. Inside, we're going to have a list of rank slots, and this will be a way to actually reference all the different slots that we have. So rank slot, rank slots. We're going to save, and on the leaderboards manager, we're going to see this list over here, but it's empty. So we're simply going to select all of these slots. You're going to click on the first one, hold shift, and then click on the last one, and it's going to select all of them. And then you simply need to drag it into the leaderboards manager. Now at this point, the leaderboard manager may be unselected, so simply click on it, lock it over here, and then do the same thing, shift, and drag it into this rank slot list. And now all of the slots will appear over here in the correct order. Now we can go back over here and unlock the inspector. Now if we open our Firebase manager and we scroll down, we have this method to read the scores. So this is a method that we created and we never used it. It simply goes into the database and it prints all the different players, all the different users. But we want to actually get the data. We want to get the data and populate it inside our leaderboards screen. But because this is something that happens online and it's something that we don't know when exactly will execute, then we cannot just do it this way because we need to wait for this to finish. So we need to change the type of this method to be an async task. So async, and it's going to be a task, and the task will simply return a list of score, or actually trivia user objects. So it's no longer void. So we're going to change this method a bit. Let's just move everything down. We're still inside the method, and we're going to have a reference to this list of trivia users. Then we're going to use the try keyword, and this will basically try to do some kind of operation. And if it fails, then it's going to run the catch block. And this is a way to handle different exceptions and errors. So system exception. So if we try this and it fails, then it's going to simply debug log error, and it's going to print the exception. So failed to fetch data, and we're going to print the actual error. So E for error. And over here, what we're going to try is to go into our database and get all the users. So Firebase uses this query snapshots thing. So query snapshot, and we're going to await because it's an asynchronous task. So FireStore collection, we're going to provide the name of the collection and get snapshots async. And again, I know all of this because of the documentation that Firebase provides, and it tells us exactly how to get things, how to set things, and we already did this over here inside the other methods, but we need to change this method a bit. So now we need to specify the name of the collection, and we already know that we changed the name of the collection to trivia users. So simply copy this and paste it over here. So what we do, we basically try to get a snapshot of our database. So we use the FireStore reference, we go to the trivia users collection, and we get a snapshot of this collection. So then we store the snapshot over here, and then we can try to do something with the snapshot. In our case, we're going to do a for each, so it's going to be exactly like this thing that we have over here. Simply copy the for each and both of these brackets. So it's going to be the first bracket and the last bracket over here. Simply cut it or copy, it doesn't matter, and paste it over here after this snapshot query. So we're going to have something like this for each document in the snapshot documents. So basically each object that is inside of this snapshot. If the document exists, then we're going to do something with this data. In our case, it's going to be a trivia user, and we're going to convert this document into a trivia user, and then we're going to, instead of pasting this information to the console, we're going to take our users list and we're going to add the user into this list. Okay, so each user that we find inside the database, add to this list. So what we actually do in the code is we reference our collection and then we loop over all the documents inside the collection. So what we see inside this column are documents, and we actually have one document for each user. But this is called a document, and inside we have some kind of object. In our case, it's a user. So we can see over here that we go to the trivia users collection, and then we for each over each document inside the snapshot. And we get each document if it actually exists, and we convert it into a trivia user. So over here, we look for different documents and we convert them into a trivia user, because Firebase doesn't know what is a trivia user. It simply knows that it has some kind of object with a player ID, player name, and player score. So we need to convert it back into a trivia user, and we will do this for each document. So if we add more users, we're going to have a bunch of documents. We can even have hundreds or thousands of users. So we need to get all of them and convert them back into trivia users and add them into this temporary list. And then we're going to actually return this entire list. So at the end of this try and catch, so it needs to be outside of the catch, we're going to return the users list. We can also rename this to be users list, and also make sure that it was updated over here. So now we can delete this entire part. So just take this entire thing that we had and select it up until the last bracket and simply delete it. So all you need to have inside of this method, inside of this read scores method, is a temporary list. And then we have this try and catch block. Inside the try, we get a snapshot from the trivia users collection. Then we loop over the snapshot and we check for all the documents. If the document exists, then we simply convert the document to a trivia user and we add a trivia user into this list. And then when this is done, when we get all the users, this loop is over. We return all the users out of this method. And this method will be used inside of our leaderboards scene. So we're going to save all of these changes and we're going to open our leaderboards manager. Inside, we're going to have a start method. And the start method will start a coroutine. And this coroutine will start a method named fetch users. And this will simply be a coroutine inside of this method. So enumerator named fetch users. And we simply need some kind of in-between method, in-between coroutine that is going to call the method from Firebase. So inside we're going to create a task, which will be of type list of trivia users. And we're going to get it from our Firebase instance read scores method. Now we get an error. Let's see, maybe we need to import something. So we're going to use this system threadings task because this is something that we need to import. Okay, this thing over here. We use this library in order to be able to use this task class. And now that we created this, we're basically going to get all the users into this user data. And we're going to yield return new wait until. And we're going to create some kind of lambda over here that is going to wait until the user data is completed. Okay, so user data is of type task, and it has a built-in method that is named isComplete, and this will become true when the task is complete. So we can basically use this coroutine and wait, right? We yield return and wait for seconds usually, but we can wait until something is completed inside of these brackets, and the something is this task. So only when this task is completed, we're going to continue and we're going to populate leaderboards, and this will be a method that will populate the leaderboards. So we're going to call this only when this task is completed, and this task is completed when this task is completed. So when we actually get the data from the database, it's going to be saved over here. So this will be completed, and then this will be true, and then we know that it's completed. So we're going to continue over here, and we're going to use this user data and take the result and pass it into this populate leaderboards class. So because we're working with an online database, we work asynchronously, so we are not working on one thread, the UI thread, we're working on another thread. We need to be able to wait until the operation is completed in order to do something with the data. Because if this is not completed in time and then we try to use the user data, it will simply be empty, right? Because here we created, but it's still empty. Only after this is completed, this will be filled with information and then we can actually use it. So here we make sure that user data was fetched. Only when it's fetched, then we can actually use it. Otherwise, we want to wait over here, and we can wait because it's a coroutine, right? Now we're going to generate this method over here, and we're going to receive a list of trivia users, and we're going to basically populate them inside our UI. So we're going to have something like this. So this method seems a bit complicated, but it's rather simple. First of all, we get the top 10 users because inside of this result, we get all the users, right? All the users that ever played our game. But then we use this built-in method that will order them, basically sort them based on one of their fields. And the field that we want to use to sort them is this player score, right? We want to sort them based on the score. So people with higher score will be first, and then people with lower score will be last. So we say order by descending. We can also say order by ascending. So descending means that we're going to get the bigger ones, and it will get smaller and smaller. But if we want ascending, we're going to do the opposite. We're basically going to start small and we're going to increase. So we can do ascending, but we want to do descending because we want to display the biggest score first, right, in the first rank, and then we want to make it smaller and smaller. So we can use this method by providing the user, and this is just a keyword, right? And it doesn't really matter what you put here. You can say data and then say data. This is just a lambda function that takes each element from this list, right? Each trivia user, and it takes the player's score and then it sorts it based on the player's score. So this data is basically a trivia user. So we can name it user, okay? But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't care what you name it. Then we're going to use this method as well. And this method will basically take the top 10 users and it's going to cut them out. So if we get 100 users inside of this result, it will take the 10 first users, and because we said descending, it's going to take the top 10 users and then it's going to convert it into a list and save it. And over here we can loop over all of our rank slots and set the data of the users. So first of all, we're going to set the data of the first user, then it's going to be increased to 1, and then we're going to set the data of the second user, third user. But let's say we don't even have 10 users, it's going to see that the count is smaller and it's going to break. So we're simply going to leave and exit this method. So for example, you want to have more slots, more than 10, then you simply say over here 20. And then you also need to make sure that you have 20 slots. But we only display the 10 top slots, so we're taking the 10 users. Now at this point, this should work, but the problem is that we don't have more users in the database. So now instead of starting to run the game and changing the name of our user and deleting the data from the player pref, it's a lot of hassle, but for testing we need to make sure that everything is working, so we can simply add more users manually over here inside the database. So we're going to create a new document and we can say auto ID, so it will basically just make up an ID, and we're going to set a field, and we can see over here that we have the player ID, and we're going to give it a value, some kind of gibberish value. We're going to add a field of player name, which will be, let's say, David, and another one, player score, and this will be, let's say, 24, which will be a number. Okay, so these are strings, but this is a number, 24. Save. And now we can see that we have our mic that was actually created from our app, but we also have this made up user that is named David, and just make sure that all the fields are exactly the same. ID, name, score, ID, name, score. Let's create a few more. So we are not going to create more than 10 users. We are going to just create 4 of them. These are just made up users, and each one has a score. And it doesn't really matter what is the order of the users inside the database, because we're going to sort them when we actually fetch them, and we wrote the code for this. And imagine we had more than 10 users. It will basically take the top 10 users by their scores, and it's going to display them. So for now, we only have 4 users, and let's make sure that everything is set up over here inside the leaderboards scene. We can also unpack it from being a prefab. And now we're going to save this scene, and we're going to open our main menu scene. Now, before we test this, let's just open our leaderboards manager once again and create an update method, because we want to, why is it not automatic? I don't know. So we want to be able to go back to the main menu, because in the previous scenes, there was no reason to go back. If we played the game, then the game should be over, and then we go to the game over menu, and then in the game over menu, we had buttons to go to the main menu. But inside of this leaderboards screen, right, if we go over here, we don't have any way to go back. We don't have any button to go back to the main menu. So for this, we're going to have a functionality to click on the back button of our mobile phone, right? And to do this, we're going to add some code over here. So we simply add this line of code, and basically each time the player presses on escape, it will move back to the main menu. But in a mobile phone, this will translate to the back button pressed on mobile. So when we press on the back button on our device, it will basically go back to the main menu, and we need to import the scene manager. So using Unity Engine Scene Management, and this will add the option for this class over here. Obviously, make sure the name of your main menu scene is the same as this one. Now we go back to the main menu and we start the game, and as soon as we click on the high score scene, we should see the 4 different users that we have over here, but they will be organized by their score. So we can click on high score, and it will take a few seconds, but we already see it over here, and we see their names. We also see their score. I named it level, but it doesn't really matter. And if we had more than 10 users, if we had, let's say, 20, 30, even 100 users, it would take the top 10 users with the highest score, and it would display them over here, and then it would also sort the score. So that's all for this episode. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you're still not a subscriber. It will support me a lot, and it will also keep you updated when new content comes out. You can also leave a like for the algorithm. And again, if you want to know something, if you want to ask questions about this episode, please let me know in the comment section. So I'll see you next time.